situation is a real mess. When thrombolysis is no option, it further turns hopeless.
So what can we do, Dr. Pari?
Dr. Asha, be brave and
Hi.
put wires fearless.
Hello.
Let's
Hello.
know something about Peerless. Please welcome Dr. Jenny Gandhi ma'am to give us more knowledge about the Peerless trial. We request Dr. Devang Desai sir to introduce Dr. Jenny Gandhi ma'am. Over to you, sir.
Good morning, Dr. Jenny. Dr. Jenny Gandhi is MBBS, MD, and DNB in interventional radiology. She is affiliated to and working as a consultant vascular and interventional radiologist at Salvi Hospital, Surat.
For my talk in the Indian Society of Critical Care, I am heartily thankful, sir. So we all know that every month we encounter few patients of pulmonary embolism in our critical care. Out of all, 5 to 10% of the patients fall into the category that is massive or submassive. Such patients either succumb or if they live with a morbidity of sequelae of pulmonary embolism, that is a chronic pulmonary hypertension and or hemoptysis. So it is very important for us as a medical fraternity that we identify such massive and submassive pulmonary embolism patients, and if we intervene at appropriate time, either we can save life or we can reduce the mortality and morbidity for such patients. So my topic today is the recent advances in catheter-directed therapies, that is by intervention through femoral vein, and it's not an open surgery, it's a minimal invasive advanced vascular care for treating pulmonary thrombus, and it's a Peerless trial which I'm going to present today. Peerless trial was published by American Heart Association and European Society of Cardiovascular Care in 2024, and it has been published in 2025 March in PubMed also. So just to give a history of pulmonary embolism and its care, the first description of pulmonary embolism was given by Rene in very early in 18th century, in 1819. He was the one who has developed stethoscope in our medical field. Then the French pathologist also recognized the pulmonary embolism, the etiology of pulmonary embolism in early 19th century, and he thought that the pulmonary thrombus are being formed within the pulmonary artery only. But the primary pathology was not known till now, till the early 19th century. Virchow was the one who gave the concept of Virchow's triad, that is a status of blood, venous damage and the hypercoagulable state within the body, especially in the veins of abdomen and in the leg, which can lead to pulmonary embolism. So the classification of pulmonary embolism, there are 3 categories of patient according to the AHA, that's the American Heart Association and European Society of Critical Care. It's a low risk patient that is a major chunk of patients which we encounter in pulmonary embolism. 40 to 60% of the hospitalized patient who has pulmonary embolism, they are low risk. Submassive pulmonary embolism, submassive are the one who have a RV strain or RV dysfunction, but there is no hypotension. Patient does not require a vasopressor. So 35 to 55% of the patients fall into this category, and remaining 5 to 10% of the patient fall into the massive pulmonary embolism, in which there is a heart failure and hypotension, hence patient require a vasopressor drug. So today we are going to the low risk patient that is going to be managed normally by a critical care and the vascular intervention radiologist by a conservative management, that's a heparin and or thrombolytic agents. But the patient with submassive and massive pulmonary embolism, they are the one who needs further treatment in form of intervention radiology, which I am going to present today. So just evolution of pulmonary embolism treatment from early 18th century. First, the surgical pulmonary embolectomy was described and was practiced in 1870. After that, the early 19th century anticoagulant came, and subsequently in late 19th century, the fibrinolytic agents came. Now there is a further higher, I mean the second, third, fourth generation of fibrinolytics, that's alteplase, tenecteplase. In between there was a concept of femoral vein and the IVC ligation also, but it has a very morbidity and mortality, hence it was not practiced further. Then the concept of IVC filter came to prevent a further pulmonary embolism in a patient who has a IVC and femoral vein thrombosis, but it has to be combined with the other intervention technique. And just to support a vascular system of the body, the ECMO came into the picture of pulmonary embolism treatment. So the main for which today I am going to take a topic is intervention, that is a catheter directed treatment for massive and submassive pulmonary embolism. There are two categories of, we have two options. The older one, that is in the early 20s, like from 2000 to 2020, we were practicing a catheter directed thrombolysis rather than a systemic thrombolysis for the patient of systemic and massive and submassive pulmonary embolism. Now since 5 years, the new game changer has come in intervention, and we have a very advanced devices of 16 French, which we introduced through a femoral vein, through IVC, through heart into the pulmonary artery, right and left main, and they are the large bore devices which suck the pulmonary thrombus immediately, like how we do a stroke interventions in the brain. That's a mechanical thrombectomy. The same mechanical thrombectomy we do in the pulmonary artery, and the results are excellent, which I am going to show in subsequent Peerless trial. So Peerless is a randomized controlled trial. It has 550 patients. It was a prospective multicentral RCT in which the intermediate risk pulmonary embolism patients were divided into a 1:1 ratio between the catheter directed thrombolysis and the large bore mechanical thrombectomy. So the design was to divide the patient equally between the large bore mechanical thrombectomy and catheter directed thrombectomy, and the primary endpoint was a ratio of following, which has to be monitored at either 7 days or a discharge, whichever was earlier. All the points which are going to be followed was the all causes of mortality, intracranial hemorrhage, any major bleeding from other sides of the body, and clinical deterioration or bailout exculpatory procedures, post-procedure ICU care, and the length of stay within the hospital. What it was assessed at 24 hours and at the time of discharge or at 30 days. Which was the earlier. So at 24 hours, the respiratory rate, dyspnea score, RV-LV ratio, and the right ventricular function. At 30 days, the total length of hospital stay, causes of readmission within the hospital, and all causes of mortality. So the results were in favor of large bore mechanical thrombectomy over catheter directed thrombolysis. The rates of deterioration or the bailout exculpatory procedure was much lower in large bore mechanical thrombectomy over catheter directed thrombolysis, and post procedure intensive care unit stay, including readmission and stay within the hospital, was also shorter in large bore mechanical thrombectomy over catheter directed thrombolysis. The other results were okay. There were no significant difference in mortality, intracranial hemorrhage, or major bleeding in two studies, but at 24 hours, in patients with large bore mechanical thrombectomy, the respiratory rates were lower. That means in more favorable, patient had a more positive outcome. Fewer had more severe modified dyspnea score, and the right ventricular dysfunction was much less in a patients of large bore mechanical thrombectomy. Right ventricle to left ventricle ratio was similar in both the study. So the conclusion was that it was in favor of large bore mechanical thrombectomy over CDT in an intermediate risk pulmonary embolism patient. So this is the catheter directed thrombolysis. So what we do in a patient with submassive or massive pulmonary embolism, who has ventricular failure, right ventricular dysfunction, and or patient has a hypotension which is lasting more than 15 minutes, and patient requires vasopressor. So in which, what should be the protocol of investigation? Patient should immediately confirm a diagnosis like via echocardiography. If there is a right ventricular dysfunction and patient requires a diagnostic test, that CT pulmonary angio should be the investigation of choice. Once on CT pulmonary angio, there is a pulmonary embolism. It has to be further followed by CT venography of lower limb. The color Doppler scan is very a screening and crude modality. So once the patient is already in CT suite, you should always ask for a CT venography to ask for the source of emboli. So it will help managing the further episodes of pulmonary embolism. Then if patient fall into the submassive of massive category, then there are two options. One is a catheter directed thrombolysis instead of systemic thrombolysis, which we do through, in ICU setup. So we go through a femoral vein, we go up to the pulmonary artery, subsequently into the right and left branch, and we put a perfusion catheter. We give a bolus dose of thrombolysis within the thrombus, within the pulmonary circulation. And then we leave the catheter there over a low dose infusion for another 48 to 72 hours. It will lyse all the thrombus, but the only crux is that patient requires a repeated angiography within the cath lab at interval of 24 hours, and we need to monitor patient for 48 to 72 hours within the ICU till the end results. Over catheter directed thrombolysis, now we have a system called a large bore catheter, which is of course costly, much more 5 times costlier than the catheter directed thrombolysis, but the results are excellent, which is shown in Peerless trial. So here is the patient who had a saddle thrombus in the pulmonary artery bifurcation, which lead to massive pulmonary embolism. So we aspirated, and this is the Inari device, one of the many devices of large bore catheter. And we aspirated all the thrombus which is shown, and the patient improved within the 24 hours. Okay, so in this, it is a one-shot treatment. Just one time angiosuite, we aspirate all the catheters, patient heart function, the hemodynamics improved immediately. Subsequently, the ICU stay can be shorter, and the pulmonary functions and the cardiovascular function and the results are much better in large bore mechanical thrombectomy over catheter directed thrombolysis. So to conclude, this is just a CT scan showing the submassive pulmonary embolism. So this is the end of my lecture. So to conclude, if a patient has a pulmonary embolism and the clinical scenario fall into the massive or submassive pulmonary embolism, then confirm the diagnosis and the heart function through echo, do a CT pulmonary angiography, along with CT pulmonary, do a CT venography to know the source and the load of thrombus within the lower limb and IVC. If there is a saddle thrombus within the main pulmonary artery, immediately call for the intervention. There are good techniques available either in form of catheter directed thrombolysis or large bore catheter aspiration, which we do routinely in our setup with excellent results. Thank you so much.
Any questions from the audience?
Specialist trial, in that second group,
Yes, sir.
intermediate risk, how will it change your practice? Whether to go for catheter directed thrombolysis or thrombectomy?
So, sir, in our scenario,
Because there is no significant change in mortality.
yeah, mortality is not changed, but the ICU stay and the rate of bleedings, which of course contribute to the morbidity, it matters. But in our practice, the cost matters. One of the most determining factor to opt for the treatment. So cost is one major and important factor for catheter directed thrombolysis. Suppose if we are able to do procedure within 2 to 3 lakhs. For the large bore catheter, the catheter itself comes 9 lakh rupees. The procedure cost escalated to more than 10 lakh rupees, even if the hospital and doctor try to help patients. So the cost is one major factor. If the family is affording and they are willing to spend, we opt for a large bore catheter, and if there is a cost factor, we go for a catheter-directed thrombolysis, explaining all risk, morbidity and mortality, and the final results of the both the for any form of thrombolysis. Yeah, that was the question, sir, right? Okay. So we always choose alteplase or tenecteplase, and we don't use the older generation of thrombolysis, that's a streptokinase. Yeah, so if it's not available, it's better to use streptokinase over doing nothing. But if there is availability, then of course use alteplase or tenecteplase. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so